Just like that, we're back for another edition of Going the Distance Live. A few housekeeping things as everybody starts logging on and everything. I will be at the Raleigh Relays on Friday. Yeah, that's right. This Friday night, I will be in Raleigh, lending my legs to pacing duties. I'm not racing. One of the Wade track and field athletes make a living in the sport is by pacing other races. A lot of times, either races that are for like college kids or something, or other pro races and stuff. A lot of times they'll have a pacer out front to make sure that the race gets going and everything. Generally, the pacer runs about somewhere between a half and 3/4 of the races and then steps off. So I'll be doing that on Friday night, the Raleigh Relays at North Carolina State University. So I'll be in Raleigh over the weekend. All my Raleigh friends, I will be in town. So I will see you guys out there. Another couple of housekeeping things that I've got going on. If you are a vasculitis patient or a vasculitis caregiver, there is a VF regional meeting on Saturday, April 7th. I'll go ahead and toss up the link to that. I will be speaking there as well. I'll be doing one of the breakout sessions for actually exercise. I'll be talking about exercise and health and answering everybody's questions about that. So if you are in the North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee area, and Raleigh is not Chapel Hill is not a far drive for you, then I would recommend popping on over. I tossed the link up for that. If anybody's interested, there's going to be some great information there. I know the big topic is bringing mindfulness to vasculitis. That was a really big deal at this national symposium last year. And a lot of these meetings, a lot of times they have a doctor come in and speak and stuff and talk about different either advances in medicine and stuff and answer patients' questions. But this time they've got William Frey coming in, who works as an organization and professional development consultant at UNC. He teaches classes there, and he works as an instructor for mindful-based stress reduction for the UNC School of Medicine. So he'll be talking with all of us basically on learning how to reduce stress and unlocking your potential in life. So I think after last week's podcast, which seemed to be a pretty big hit, I've actually still been answering questions. Excuse me, hold on. Been outside a lot today. Hence the beanie. I got cold. It was underdressed in 70-degree weather and 65-degree weather, if you can believe it. Yay, anemia. But anyways, back to what I was discussing a minute ago. They will... the mindfulness thing, talking about reducing stress and stuff. And last week we talked a lot about stress and anxiety and depression, panic attack problems. And I've still been honestly answering questions up until today about last week's podcast. So everybody that had the courage to reach out and wanted to chat, thank you. And I hope that I provided some sort of information for you that has helped. If you missed it last week, it's the podcast last week. We really dove into how stress and anxiety and depression are talked about in our country and our culture, how it's addressed, how it's not addressed, and how I feel is a better way to address the problems going forward. And approaching it from a more holistic standpoint. And by holistic, I don't necessarily mean hippy-dippy, voodoo, chakra, burning some sage and essence stuff. I mean, as a holistic standpoint of approaching it from how you're living, what you're eating, what you're doing, and working on yourself. And I know that that's a lot of what we'll be talking about at the regional meet for vasculitis patients. I tossed the link up there for that. I'm sure William is way more equipped to handle that and discuss all that with you. So if anybody's going to be there, I look forward to seeing everybody there. I'll be speaking in one of the breakout sessions about exercise and nutrition and stuff. That is more my realm. I've only become qualified to deal with stress and anxiety as somebody that has suffered from it over the last 5 or 6 years. So, and then after that, we got a busy couple of months coming up here. Actually, before I even get racing, normally I'm traveling all over the place because I'm busy racing. But after that, I will be. Let me look at my calendar here. I will be in Boone, North Carolina, at the new running store there. It's called Up and Running. I'll be there on Tuesday night for their group run, and on April 19th. That's right. Sorry, getting dates all confused in my head. But I'll be there April 19th. I'll do the group run with everybody, hang out afterwards, share a little bit of my story, sign some books. If anybody is interested in one of those, I'll have some with me for sale. If you've got one and you live in Boone and you want me to sign it, I'll obviously be happy to sign it for you and draw. Actually, I can't draw. I don't even know why I was going to say draw. I can't draw stick figures. So I'll be there on Tuesday, April 19th. So if you are in the Boone, Blowing Rock, greater high country area, get out to Up and Coming or Up and Running. It is the new running store in Boone, North Carolina, run by my dear friend Caleb Massland. So definitely get out there. And then last but certainly not least, I will be once again in Raleigh. A lot of Raleigh all over North Carolina this month. I will for the Vino for Vasculitis, which is a big charity fundraiser for the Vasculitis Foundation. It is put on for a girl by the name of Danielle that passed away in 2014 because of the same illness that I have, which is granulomatosis polyangiitis, GPA for short. Her friends have hosted a wine event. This is actually the 5th year, so this will be the 5th anniversary. They host a big fundraiser. It's a silent auction, a night of wine and drinking, sharing, and helping raise funds for the Vasculitis Foundation. So I will once again grace everyone with a few words of wisdom from my mouth while everybody mingles and has food or whatever. If you're in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, we would obviously love to see you come out. Tickets and all that stuff and information for that is available at the link I tossed up. So anyways, let me get caught up here on a couple of comments here before we get going. David, I completely agree with you. When I eat right, sleep right, and keep a healthy work-life balance, anxiety is almost non-existent. That's completely true. We went over a lot of that last week just to give a little recap about last week and kind of what we talked about is, there's basically a scale that they use when they're measuring people's anxiety and depression problems. And it's basically an 80-point scale, 20 being you're completely happy, your head's in the clouds, and I don't want to say that's not, nobody's ever there, but those are only fleeting moments. When you're at a 20, 80 being the point where you're going to commit suicide, and that 80 is the number they claim people are at when they do commit suicide. So we look at ways of reducing that number, and lots of things affect that number: how you eat, how much you sleep, medication, lots of things. And last week I talked a lot about how a lot of psychiatrists or psychologists or even doctors, general practitioners that are prescribing a lot of these anti-anxiety medications and stuff don't teach patients how to deal with the problems. They give them a pill, tell them it's going to help, which it will help on average. Those medications have about a 2 or 3 point effect on that number. So generally they'll lower your number from about 2 to 3 points on average. So if you're at 80 and that lowers you to 77 or 78, that is a very important few numbers, but also same thing of getting a good night's sleep, eating right, exercising, things like that can move it 4, 5, 6, 8 points on the scale. And not to say that somebody that is severely depressed and having suicidal thoughts, that all of a sudden sleeping better and eating right is all of a sudden going to address those things. But until we teach people how to properly deal with it, I think I've run into so many people that aren't even vasculitis patients, just people that suffer from anxiety or stress, which seems to be more and more frequent now. And more doctors are diagnosing it. More and more doctors are giving patients pills to handle the problem. They're giving them a pill without giving them a lot of instructions. And once you have that problem, it's not going to go away on its own. Taking a pill or multiple pills or lots of pills or drinking or doing drugs or whatever is not going to take away the problem. So you have to fix the root of the problem and start addressing those concerns. I know for myself, it was only when I started addressing those problems that my own anxiety and stress got any better. All the pills in the world aren't going to fix the problem. So anyways, that just is a quick rundown of what we went over last week. If anybody's more interested in that talk, I have links to that on my Facebook page and stuff to last week's. But this week's, I kind of wanted to, and not completely off topic, but I kind of wanted to segue into talking a bit about patient advocacy and being your own advocate as a patient. And actually what triggered this off this week was not even, I talk with a lot of vasculitis patients every week about doctors and doctor access and dealing with doctors when they're not being cooperative. So it's really, really, it's something that comes up a lot. And I feel like I didn't know enough about it early in my diagnosed life, I guess. Early in my tenure, I'm approaching we're about 10, actually a month away from my 10-year anniversary. So I've been dealing with this illness for about 10 years. And I didn't understand early on how to be my own advocate and fight for my rights as a patient, and remember that I actually kind of have the power, because we get in the doctor's offices and so often we just kind of listen to what they say. They're in and out in 5 or 6, 7 minutes. I believe the statistic is doctors generally spend less than 7 minutes in a room with every single patient. So that's a lot of ground to cover in a very short amount of time with a patient. So, and they're doing that all day long. You know, they may remember you. They may remember a lot about your case. They may have had to deal with you a lot, or you might just be another part in the meat grinder, and they're just, turning the wheel. So just remember that you have the power as the patient. And doctors can get very egotistical about things. Doctors can think that they know better than other doctors. Doctors don't want to cooperate with other doctors. So especially as a vasculitis patient or a rare disease patient, you're a lot of times going to have a lot of different doctors, because a lot of times your problems are multisystemic, meaning they're going to, I think I just made up that word. I don't even know what that means. But anyways, they're going to affect a lot of different organs. Like for myself, I have a rheumatologist who kind of oversees all of my things, because rheumatology deals in the immune system. And he kind of is who everything kind of sort of runs through. But then I also have a pulmonologist, which is a lung doctor. I have ENT for my sinus and my ears. And I have a kidney doctor. And that's just all for my disease stuff. That's not counting the physical therapists, the chiropractors, and the massage therapists that also take care of me as an athlete. So, and that's just me. And that's not to count like when I need to go, when I've just got a cold or the flu or something like that, and I have to go to the doctor too. So keeping all those people on the same page in 2018 should not be nearly as hard as it still is. Doctors don't like to communicate. I have gotten to places to get my infusion and found out that certain things weren't sent over. I've gotten I've had doctors think that they know more than other doctors and try to change my treatment, even though they weren't my own doctor. So there's horror stories that I hear every single week about how doctors have treated patients, how doctors have kind of let their ego get in the way and not listen to patients, force patients into doing things they might not really want to do. So I've just jotted down a couple of notes here about things that can kind of help you when you go in. And one of those is jotting down notes, jotting down questions ahead of time before you go in. That way you're prepared, because I know for myself, a lot of times I'll have a lot of questions before I go in, especially if stuff isn't going well, or I've been feeling a certain way and he'll ask me something and I get sidetracked, or kind of just lose my train of thought during the meeting, because it kind of gets stressful, because you do feel like you're under the gun, because you feel like when they come in, they're only going to spend a couple of minutes with you. So you kind of have to, you're rushed, and they're checking your vitals. They're listening to your heart and your lungs and your breathing and everything else. And you just feel kind of rushed and you feel on the spot. And a lot of times you forget those questions. So something I found helpful is jot them down. You either jot them down on a piece of paper, or we all have these lovely black devices that have notepads and everything else on them that you're more than capable of jotting down some notes to ask the doctor about. So that's super helpful for me when I've had a lot of questions. I want to go in there because I always also too, when I leave, I always get accused by my family members and loved ones of not asking enough questions, because I get out and all of a sudden they ask me a bunch of questions and I realize I didn't understand everything that happened when I was in there. So jot things down before you go in to see your specialist or go see your doctors. Jot that stuff down. Let's see here. The other things that's super important is knowing your disease, knowing your allergies, knowing what medications you're on, all of those things, because sometimes you might just find yourself in the ER. It happens sometimes. Accidents happen. And when that happens, you're a lot of times going to be dealing with somebody that doesn't have any history of your disease. They don't have any of your background information, and you are going to have to rattle all that off. And you are actually going to become the circus that has now entered the ER or the doctor. Everybody is going to want to come talk to you, ask you a million questions, because most of the time you have walked into their doctor's office or their ER and they have not seen or heard anything about your illness either ever or since med school. And so they're going to want to come in and tell all their doctor friends and everybody else that's on staff about the crazy rare disease patient that's in room 8 over here. And all of a sudden you're their entertainment for the evening, because I guess somebody's not bleeding out somewhere or something. So all of a sudden they all just want to come ask you a million questions. Also, they might not understand a lot about your illness, so you're going to have to explain it to them, because maybe they have heard about it. Maybe they saw it in a class in med school 15, 20 years ago. Maybe they heard about it on House, Dr. House, if anybody else remembers that, because I know for myself, they used to try to diagnose people with what I have all the time on House. Now, they never did diagnose anybody with it, actually, but it was one of the ones that they rambled off at the top of the, that people might have. So they probably haven't seen a case of it. So you have to be able to explain everything it is. You have to explain what it's affecting, what medications you're on, what those medications are trying to do, because they might not even know anything about those medications. And they might be in a situation where you're not going to be able to talk to your doctor. I mean, a lot of times I know our doctors are all on call and stuff, and they can be reached, but it might not be immediate. And if there's something as far as an emergency going on with you, you need to be able to give that information to them directly in a clear and concise way. Also, writing that down. I know when I get on more than about 2 medications, I keep a list actually on my phone of everything I'm on, like whether it's, even now, so it's just like, my anxiety pill and the vitamins I take, that's all I'm currently on. So that's all I don't have to remember anything, but I keep that stuff in my phone. That way, if something happens, and I can just either give them my phone or somebody can look at it, or if I can't talk, it's there, or I can't remember the dosage or something. All that stuff's important. Not knowing what you might have to happen, or what might have, not knowing what they might have to do. If heaven forbid you be in an accident, or like me one day when I walked into the ER because my kidneys were shutting down, and my doctor called me and told me I needed to get to the closest ER to get a bag of prednisone to stop my kidneys from failing. So whatever the case may be, you have to know all that stuff, because you're going to be dealing a lot of times with doctors that don't know anything about your illness or your disease. If you're lucky and you're near your doctors and they can provide all that care, that's absolutely incredible. But sometimes you're going to be traveling. Things might happen. I hadn't seen our girl Kate on here tonight, but Kate has been multiple places before, including at the International Symposium one time when she fainted and had an episode and ended up in the ER. Luckily, her actual doctor was there speaking at the symposium, hopped in the ambulance with her. But we're not all going to be that lucky, and sometimes things are going to happen, and you have to give all that information over. Actually, kind of what triggered this whole conversation was I was talking to a dear friend of mine about, he got some blood work done and wanted to have some more done to check on some other things that he might be possibly worried about. And he's actually kind of an adult athlete, and he was worried about because of his diet and stuff that he might be lacking in some things, and was trying to get the doctor to check for them, and the doctor just didn't even want to listen to him and was basically telling him he was an idiot for checking those things. When luckily, for those of us that like to read and consume information, the internet is a beautiful and dark and dangerous place to give us information. So a lot of times you can be more informed on a topic than a general practitioner might, and they get kind of pushy sometimes. I know from my own experience and talk with other patients, they get pushy about when you ask for something specific. It's like, oh, I'd like to have this check to see where this is at, because I've heard, X, Y, or Z about that. And if they don't either know anything about it or they think they know something about it, and the literature might have changed on it, they'll get confrontational, and it gets awkward. I've been in doctor's appointments when it gets confrontational, and doctors don't really want to listen to you. So, be heard, be able to explain what you're looking for, why you're looking for it. And remember, like I said earlier, you're the patient, you have the power. You can choose another doctor, especially if it's something just like a general practitioner. Now, I know a lot of us come from areas that, there might be only one doctor that can handle your case. And in that case, that's when things get really, really tricky. So I would just remember, for the general population and for vasculitis and rare disease patients, to always, always, always remember that you can get in a second opinion. You can go to another doctor. You can always do that. You have the power to leave. They are not physically holding you there. So remember that you have the power. And if they don't want to listen, then you can go to another doctor. So always remember that. Always remember that they are there to listen to you and treat your needs, not to come in, throw some stuff at you, and get out so that they can make money. So please remember, no matter what you're doing, to be heard when you're in the doctor's office. And with that said, when the doctors are also asking questions, I remember a lot of times, especially as a kid and a young adult, I remember being afraid to talk about certain things, or things that I'd done, or lifestyle choices that I had made, and sharing those with my doctor, because you're nervous, because as an adult, and especially as a 15, 16, 18, 20-year-old, and you've got a doctor that most of the time is 2 to maybe 3 times your age, you feel like they might be judgmental of what you've chosen to do. They need to know everything you've done, good and bad. because if they don't know that stuff, then it can literally be detrimental to your health. So don't be afraid to share things with them. Don't be afraid to talk to them about things that you might have and decisions you might have made as a young adult. We've all been there. We've all chosen to try and do things that we either might not be proud of or wanted to try or experiment with. And if a doctor asks you about it, don't lie. There's no reason to lie to them. They are not the police. They're not going to arrest you as long as you didn't kill anybody. They're not going to arrest you. A lot of times they're not going to ask a lot of questions. Now they might tell you that you made a bad choice or something, but do not be afraid to tell them, because they need to know that stuff. They need to know everything that you're doing. So don't be afraid of them. I know I was afraid of them a lot. And I remember talking at the International Symposium this past summer in the young adults group that, especially dealing with a lot of young adults, and they're either out in college or in high school, and things come up, substances get passed around, and a lot of times, your doctors ask you about all that stuff every single time you go. And you have to remember that most of them, I know I've kind of harped on some bad cases here, but most of them are very understanding, especially if they're dealing with a rare disease patient. They're very understanding, and they're of anything that you might be going through. So just lay it out there for them, because the more information they have, the better they can help you. And if you're withholding information and withholding some things about how you are or how you're feeling or things you've done, they might not be able to get to the bottom of what exactly is going on, especially in complicated situations like vasculitis and other rare diseases. If there's some other things that you are throwing in the mixture of substances that you are taking, they need to know. Even if they scold you for it, that you're not going to get in trouble at the end of the day. Because remember, like I said, you can leave. You can go to another doctor. So just remember that. You always need to share all the information about things that you are doing with your doctors. And don't be afraid to ask them questions about things or how certain drugs and stuff might interact with things. Or, I know if you're like me, and especially when you're at times you've been on a lot of medications, and the side effects or you just don't read because they're scary. And sometimes the side effects sound scarier than even your own illness. Sometimes when I've read some of the side effects of, like, for lack of better words, anal leakage, I wonder if I would just be better served just continuing to be sick. But you need to understand your body and understand when things are going on and how you're feeling when you take something. And if something comes up, don't be afraid to call the doctor and ask. Or if you're on a new medication and all of a sudden you're feeling a little weird or something, don't be afraid to check with your doctor. Don't be afraid to call the doctor. Don't be afraid to go into the ER and get checked. I know about a year, actually it was right at a year ago, when I was finishing up that first round of Rituxan I'd had, I started getting weird heart problems, and I tried to ignore it for several hours, and my heart rate was really, really weak feeling. I basically felt like my heart was kind of just squeezing like this, and not like a nice big hard contraction like it's used to. Big, strong contraction where I can, unfortunately, I'm so skinny, I can feel my heartbeat against my rib cage most of the time. So when stuff starts going wrong with my heart, I normally feel it. Like they thought I had a heart problem one time because I was feeling my heart like kind of skip beats or something. It turned out I just had like something normal called PVCs, which like 65% of the population has, but about 0% ever knows that they have it because they can't actually feel it. But I was actually feeling it when I was laying down. So, and needless to say, I got taken off running for about a week there one time because I could feel something weird happening with my heart. But it was, once again, it was better to go get checked than and find out everything's okay, then my heart stopped. And I've seen that happen. Not seen that happen, but there's runners that have dropped dead. There's athletes that have dropped dead. And then dealing with all the things that happen when you're on medication and stuff. So many different things affect so many different systems. And when I was on Rituxan and a host of other drugs to keep, to try to calm my immune system back down, when my heart rate got weak and stuff, that should have been a pretty good sign that, like, you need to go get checked. And because a lot of your blood levels and stuff can get off as well. So it's really smart to go to the doctor anytime anything is going wrong. Don't be stupid. Go to the doctor. Listen to your doctor. It's stupid not to. So with that also said, if the doctors don't get back to you, don't be afraid to pester them. I know I've had to pester my doctors and my nurses. In fact, it's gotten to the point with one of my doctors. I was there so often, I got the nurse's cell phone number, and now when I need anything, I just text her instead of having to deal with front desk staff. Find the best way, especially dealing with your with your rheumatologist or your ENT or whoever it is that is your main caregiver or your main doctor. Find out the best way to get in touch with them, whether it's email, whether it's text, whether it's email, whether it's calling and leaving a voicemail, or telling the front desk staff certain things so that that your message gets through. Because sometimes with us, things can kind of get dicey if you don't get information back right away. So make sure that you know the proper way to get in contact with your doctor soon, because a lot of times, I know I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of desk staff at Lord knows how many different doctors' offices over the years, whether it's trying to get appointments, whether it's trying to get treatments, whatever approved. And the line that I hear myself say more often than I should ever have to say when you're dealing with life and death treatments, and is there's a difference between them not being able to do something and them refusing to do something. I've told, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 people over the years over the phone or in person. It's not that you can't do this, it's that you won't do this. There's, whether it's some situation that they've gotten themselves in, whether they're dragging their feet on something, whether they don't want to find time for you, whether they don't want to talk to you, whether they don't want to give you the answers right then, whether they don't want to follow treatment protocols or whatever it is. There's a difference between can't and won't. And most of the time it is them choosing not to do something and them saying they won't do it, which is very different than them not being able to do it. It's not that they're not capable of doing it, it's that they are choosing not to do it. And that is an extreme difference. So once again, you have to learn to fight for yourself, be your own patient advocate, because a lot of times those people are going to kind of get in your way. And it sucks. It's unfortunately one of the barriers and one of the problems in our current medical system. It's not near the most important problem that we're having. Currently, a lot of that obviously has to stem around access and cost for people to stay alive, to get the treatment that they need. That is obviously the biggest factor right now, but probably just past that is red tape in so many places, because doctors are afraid of getting sued. Doctors are afraid of them not getting paid. Doctors are afraid of just being wrong, of them being egotistical or whatever it is. There's, a lot of problems, and there's a lot of red tape in doctors' offices that they're just choosing not to deal with. So remember, you're just going to have to fight and fight for what you need. I know last year it got to the situation because of insurance and getting my treatment approved across state lines, because I don't live in the same state as my doctor. And I was getting worse and worse by the day. And I finally had to tell the guy on the other end of the phone that if he, not understanding the urgency of the situation, and he had also not done his job appropriately and mishandled some of my paperwork, which was causing me severe pain, I just gladly reminded him that if he continued to screw this up, that he might be responsible for me losing my kidneys because I didn't get my treatment on time. So sometimes it sucks when you have to be level with people like that. But it's what you got to do. It's what you got to do to fight for what you need to stay alive, or keep your organs, or get the treatment you need. So don't be afraid to put your foot down and get a little rude and get nasty with them. I've done it on multiple occasions. I've gotten a lot more creative and artful at it. It used to be a lot of cussing and yelling at them. I found that a lot less effective than pinning my health on some poor guy that didn't do his job right. Not even guy. Sometimes it's been a female as well. I have pinned my health on them for them refusing or not being sufficient or efficient at their job. So remember, fight for yourself, because nobody else is going to do it for you, unless you're a kid and your parents are still helping you do it. Remind them to fight for yourself too, or remind them to fight for you. But most of the time, when you've got a parent fighting for you for your treatment, parents are even going to be more aggressive than you will be sometimes. So don't be afraid to go at them. I've gone at them numerous times. Once again, they're not going to arrest you for being rude. It might make an awkward conversation, but always smile. I'm always nice to them afterwards, after they get stuff done and they do their job. I'm always extremely nice to them, to the point where I think it confuses them sometimes, because they think that I'm just some giant asshole, probably, which I can be when they're not doing stuff right. So don't forget to just this whole thing's been about is being your own advocate and listening to that, or not listening to that, being that. Like, you have to stand up for your rights as a patient, or you're not. Sometimes you're just not going to get the treatment that you deserve as a human being. So that's what I had for everybody tonight. If anybody's got any specific questions about that or wants to chat about anything else, plus, as I've said every week, over the last 3 or 4 weeks now, I've been challenging people to go out and learn each and every week at the end of the podcast. So if you learned anything new or cool this week, please feel free to share that. We'll talk about it if you want to. If not, we can move on and hope that you learn something new next week. For those that haven't heard the challenge, every week I've been challenging people because I've been given the situation in life with my education and with my disease and what I want to do in life, that I've had to continually read and change my mind about things a lot in life. And I've noticed a continuing problem I've seen in our current culture that I think needs fixing. And it's not a political thing. It's coming out in politics because people are scared and people are refusing to learn or change their minds about things. One of the most powerful things that I feel like happens in my life is when I learn something new that I didn't know before, and it changes the way that I think about something. Last week, we talked a lot about, like I said, like the anxiety and depression stuff. And when I've learned new information about it, and improved my quality of life. When I learned new information about nutrition, when one of the biggest things that I feel like has had a great change in my life in the last, 6, 8, 10 months. Actually, it's longer than that. It's probably about a year and a half now. God, year and a half, 2 years, year and a half, is like the intermittent fasting thing and allowing working more on my gut biome and stuff like that. And when I learn new things like that and it changes the way that I feel or has a drastic impact on my life, I think it is so cool. And I want to share those things with people. And I want to talk about them. And I talk about them any chance I get with anybody that'll listen. Because I just think it's so cool when you used to think one way and then new information, whether it comes through science or research, or whether it comes through just talking to somebody and learning through their experiences about something that they've dealt with that you had no clue about, that was even out there, or you didn't have the capabilities to even understand because you didn't know it existed. When you learn those things, it changes your mind on stuff, and it makes you a better person. It makes you a smarter person. It makes you a stronger person. I feel like a lot of times, especially within our political climate, people get yelled at for being flip-floppers because they change their mind on something. But if new information gets presented to us and we're refusing to change and not listen to that information, I think that's one of the problems that we're having is a culture. So I know for my own sake that I am a miracle of modern medicine. If doctors and science and research hadn't pushed the field forward, I wouldn't be sitting here sharing this information with you. So not only did I love science growing up, not only did I study science in college, but I've always loved learning new things. And I guess one of the things that's been even harder for me to understand in our current climate is the fear of learning new things, the fear of things that have been presented to you, and people not wanting to change their mind on certain things or being hardliners. Remember, the best thing we can do is listen to other people and listen to their concerns and listen to where they've been. I've gained an incredible amount of knowledge about the medical field, about what other patients go through. And it's made me a better patient. It's made me a better human being by being able to listen to those people and listen to their stories. Because when you can see what other people go through in life and the struggles that they have, it makes you grateful for what you have. And I certainly have not had it easy, but I know that there's also a lot of people that have had it far worse than me. And I'm incredibly humbled every single day by the things that I read and the things that people have overcome. And I feel like if I don't learn something from that, then I'm not just failing myself, but I'm failing my audience, and I'm failing my mission, and my mission to share and learn, or just to share with people. And if I'm not learning, then I'm not doing my job. I'm not being a good advocate for y'all. I'm not being a good ambassador for the Vasculitis Foundation. I'm not being a good ambassador for track and field. I'm not being a good ambassador for distance running. So if I'm not learning new things, then I'm failing y'all. And part of the thing every week is to share new stuff with y'all. And hopefully some of y'all learned something about how to talk to your doctors this week from what I said. So whatever you're doing, just know that, don't just know it. Don't be afraid to learn something new. So I challenge people at the end every single week to get out and read something or learn something that you might not know. I try to bring something new to everybody every week, and hopefully I brought some information about being a better patient to everybody, regardless of whether you're a rare disease patient or not, we could all stand to understand the medical system a little bit better. And if anybody ever has any questions about stuff, I am by no means a medical expert, but please don't be afraid to reach out. I make myself available on all forms of social media and everything. It's pretty easy to get in contact with me. But if you're struggling with anything, please don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help, because that's the other thing people are afraid to do. I know I used to be afraid to ask for help. It's still tough for me to ask for help a lot of times. It comes from being fiercely independent and stubborn, incredibly stubborn and ridiculously hard-headed, and oftentimes very stupid, until I learn something new that changes my mind, and then all of a sudden I feel smarter. So until I learn something new that then changes my mind, and then I'm like, God, I used to be dumb. So yeah, no, don't be afraid to get out there and read something that might change your mind. If anybody's got anything cool that they learned in the last week, or something they've learned, it doesn't have to be in the last week, something they've learned in recent times that changed the way they thought about something, I'd love to hear from y'all. Even if you're watching this 10 years from now in the future, don't be afraid to comment below, whether it's here on Facebook or YouTube, or I don't know if you're watching it on your VR headset in 2040, or the chip implanted in your brain. Don't be afraid to comment and start a discussion about stuff. That's how we all learn. And with that, I'm gonna leave everybody with their time this week. I thank all of y'all each and every single week for being a part of this discussion, being part of Team Brandon, and sharing these videos, getting involved and talking. You guys really are what keeps me going every single week, and gets me excited for running, gets me excited for sharing these things. Like, I'm super excited about all these upcoming events. If you weren't logged on earlier, you can scroll up in the comment section and see all the places that I'm going to be in the next month or month and a half. I'll run through them real quick. This Friday, I'll be in Raleigh at the Raleigh Relays at North Carolina State University, lending my legs to some pacing duties for some of the college kids. I don't think there's any other pros in the race, but so it's mostly college kids. And then on Saturday, April 7th, which happens to be my dad and my brother's birthday, I will be sharing that day, not with them, but with all the special patients in North Carolina and the greater North Carolina area. If you are a vasculitis patient and you're in North Carolina, make sure you make your way to Chapel Hill on next Saturday. I tossed up information about registering for that event. We've got Dr. William Frey. I'm sorry if I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head. He's coming in and speaking about mindfulness and reducing stress as a vasculitis patient. So I know that was one of the best attended events at the International Symposium last year with dealing with mindfulness. So it's not the same speaker, but it is the same topic. I'm sure it will go well. I will also be doing a breakout session on exercise and nutrition, and answer any of those questions you got. So if you're in the greater North Carolina area, please register for that event. I'll also, of course, have some books and stuff there for sale as well to sign or whatever if anybody wants that. And then on April 19th, I will be in Boone, North Carolina in the high country. I'll be back in God's country, up and running, which is the new running specialty store run by my dear friend Caleb Maslin. They have a group run every Tuesday night, I believe at 5 or 5:30. I can't remember the exact time. I threw up the link for that up in the comment section as well. To register, if you're in that area, please come out on Saturday night. Once again, like I said, I'll have books. I'll do the group run with everybody, hang out afterwards, and just do Boone stuff. And then finally, the last event in April is the Vino for Vasculitis, which is put on by Jess Foster and some of her friends for their friend Danielle, who passed away in 2014 or 2013. Sorry, I can't remember right now off the top of my head, and the screen's not up in front of me anymore, so I apologize. So I think it was 2013 when she passed away. They put on a fundraiser. She was a big wino. Her and her friends loved wine, so they have a fundraiser and wine night in Raleigh I toss up a link to that as well. If you're in the Raleigh area, we would love to have you come out. There's some amazing things that they will be auctioning off right now, or not right now, but that night. So please go check that page out if you're in the Raleigh area. We'd love to see you. I'll be there. I'll once again grace everybody with some wonderful words of wisdom from my dome up here. And then, last but not least, my good friend Zach Stone has, thanks to all of y'all, has exceeded his goal of raising $300 for the Vasculitis Foundation when he runs the Eugene Marathon on April 29th. He's running to honor vasculitis patients. He didn't have to do it. He is just a dear friend and an amazing human that decided to run for a cause. And Zach, we are truly grateful for you, brother. Thank you for doing that. If anybody has seen his fundraiser, we've been sharing it. It's not done. The foundation always needs more money. There's always more patients. As we talked tonight, one of the big things that the Vasculitis Foundation does is they share information with doctors through continuing education program. They get information to doctors so doctors can diagnose patients sooner, and so they have more information available to them, as well as doing a host of other things for families and just being a hub for finding information out about your disease, finding doctors, all of that. But the most important thing is their continuing education programs that they run that gets up-to-date research information and literature to the doctors so that they're getting the best possible treatments to their patients. And, you know, I just know for myself, a lot of times I'll have doctors that are on different kind of levels of the research and where they're at and what they've understood or what they've heard and what they've read or what they've had a chance to consume. So getting that material out there is extremely important. And that's one of the huge things the Vasculitis Foundation does. So, and then right around the corner, of course, May is Vasculitis Awareness Month. So we'll be doing a bunch of stuff for that, but I'm not going to take up any more of you guys' time. As always, you guys have been absolutely awesome. Thank you all for participating and listening. If you know anybody that might benefit from hearing tonight's podcast, please share it with them. And as I said earlier, please feel free to comment if you learned something new and want to share it, or if you've got some questions about dealing with doctors. Once again, I'm not a doctor, but I've dealt with a lot of them. So if you're struggling, please feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to the Vasculitis Foundation. There's resources available to you that can make your life better. So don't forget that. So till next week, as I say every time, guys, go out in the world this week and learn something that might just change your mind.